Hi everybody and welcome to the What's New webinar for the latest version of Mission Control. Version 1.68 is now available on the App Exchange as of the 3rd of May. So we're going to take a quick look at all of the new features, and then we'll jump into a demo. Okay, so what's new? So we've enhanced the time logger to make it more mobile friendly when being used on the Salesforce mobile app, or as a community user logging in through a mobile device. We've also added in a new billing type that allows you to manage retainer and T&M in one project. We've made a few enhancements to role allocations, a few enhancements to the timesheet and role utilization report, and the hours distributor. So we'll dive in and take a bit more of a look as to what's coming within each one of these. So the mobile app time logger, so as I mentioned, it's the existing time logger, but when you're using it in context of a mobile device, it's going to be a far more mobile friendly, feature-rich component. So it's going to comprise of three tabs: the action list, which allows you to have quick logging features. You can also go off and find an action if it's not in your list, and you can also see what time logs you own that are requiring being submitted for approval. The retainer to T&M billing type. So this is a new billing type on your project that allows you to actually have retainer amounts and time and materials. So it might be that you are charging your customer a fixed fee on a monthly basis. So for example, you might be charging them an amount that allows them to have 10 hours of support per month. Now, if you go over those 10 hours in any given period, a time and materials invoice will be raised for the additional hours over and above the allowed 10. The role allocations, there's a few enhancements there, so you can now factor in your role allocations can now take into account checklist items. So rather than actually just taking into account the action or the contributor dates, the checklist items can also be factored in. So there's a new setting on the console that will need to be enabled for that to happen. And we've also added in a field onto the project that allows you to prevent role allocations and role actuals being generated for individual projects. Timesheet enhancements, a couple of things there. We've primarily new settings that have been added in. So there's a few enhancements to the clone last week's component, and as I say, there's a few timesheet settings that have been added. So the ability to hide the account lookup filter, as well as disabling hyperlinks for internal users or community users. On the role utilization report, we've added in the ability to toggle the role utilization chart. So you can now choose what is driving the x-axis of that chart. So it can either be the hours or the percentage. And we've also added in a field onto the role record that allows you to restrict the visibility of the data within the role utilization to only that person's role record. So we've had customers who want to show their individual team members the results of the role utilization, but they want to restrict that to them to only show their individual performance rather than being able to see co-workers' performance as well. And then finally, on the hours distributor enhancements, just minor update where you can actually now see the start date and the end date of that apply to the individual rows, as well as being able to update the contributor dates when you're extending hours outside of the existing date range. Okay, so they're all of the new features. So what we'll do is we'll jump in and take a look at those in a bit more detail. So what we're looking at here is the time logger component that you're used to using elsewhere in Mission Control. So it's the same time logger component that you're using on the project overview, on the action pad, on the whiteboard, and so on. So what we've done is enhanced it to provide you with more functionality and more user-friendly functionality when being used in context of a mobile device. So you can access this component when you're using the Salesforce mobile app, or if you're a community user and you're logging into your Salesforce community via the browser of a mobile device, you will see across the top you'll have access to these three tabs. You'll have the action list, you'll have the ability to find an action, or you'll have the ability to submit for approval. So the action list by default will show this week. Now I'll just click on that to show you that you've got options for this week, last week, next week, or this month. And that will persistently remember whichever option that you've selected. It will persistently remember that each time that you come back to the time logger. So as I scroll down, it will show me all of the actions that have been assigned to me based on the list view that I've selected. Depending on my timesheet settings, if I've chosen to also look at overdue actions, they will also be included as well. The find action component, if I just click on that, so that's obviously the standard, the more traditional time logger that you're used to seeing throughout the system. So if you do need to log time against an action that isn't coming up in your action list, you can toggle over to the find action component and then look up the details as normal. And then the submit for approval shows you all of your time logs that are sitting there that need to be submitted for approval. So just back on the action list. So a few things here. What I'm able to do is I can actually click on the plus 15 minutes or plus 1 hour, and that will allow me to quickly update the hours completed field. So I'm going to click on the plus 15 minutes here. So you'll see that that's now added 0.25 into the hours completed field. If I click that again, it goes up to half an hour. So the icons on the right, the green money icon indicates that this is going to be logged as billable hours. Now, if I want to toggle that to be non-billable, I'm just going to click that, and that will turn red. I can also click on the pencil icon to add in some additional notes. So I'm just going to add in, these are my progress notes, and click on save. That will return me to that list. So I'm going to, on the action below that, I'm just going to click on 1 hour, and then I'll also click on the 15 minutes. So I'm now going to be adding 1.25 hours for that time log. So I can quickly add in some hours for some additional actions here. So when I'm ready to complete all of those, I just click on the save button located up in the top right, and that will save all of those time logs for me, and I'll get confirmation once that's been done. Now I can also start tracking time as well. So I'm going to click on the start tracking time for PAN 225. And you'll see now what's happened there is that automatically appears at the top of my list. And when I come back here and go to stop the time, it will show me how long I've been tracking that for. So what I'm going to do now is just click over onto the submit for approval tab. So that shows me all of the time logs that I've got in the system that I need to submit for approval. I can click on the submit icon for each individual one. Now, let's say on this first one that we're looking at for time log 432, I can see that there's no notes or time log type being added at the moment. So what I can do is just click on the pencil icon, add in my notes here, and also select my time log type, and then just update those. So that obviously automatically updates the fields for me, so I can go through and review if I need to actually make any changes on any of these. If I want to submit an individual time log, I can just click on the submit icon for that individual row, and that will submit that. Now, if I want to submit everything that's on the list for approval, I just click on that master icon located up in the top right, and that will submit every single one of them. Okay, so back on that action that I'm currently tracking time for, you'll see that it's sitting there at the top and telling me how long I've been tracking time for. So what I can do is click on the red icon, and when I click on that, that gives me confirmation that the timer has stopped. Now you can see that it's telling me how long that it's converted that into time. So I can go in and add notes if I need to make changes. But when I'm ready, I click on the save icon, and that will save that time log for me. So the next new enhancement that we're going to look at is the retainer to T&M billing type. So we've added in a new billing type that's been included for customers to manage an invoicing scenario that was not previously supported by existing billing types. So to take advantage of this feature, you will need to add the retainer to T&M value into the billing type pick list field. All of the details are in the release notes. I'm just going to jump into my project and talk through the setup. So as I mentioned, the billing type needs to be retainer to T&M. And if I scroll down, I will need to set my billing cycle to retainer, set my frequency, payment terms, and the retainer amount, and obviously periodic billing next date. So the scenario that this retainer to T&M supports is you might have sold, let's say you've sold to a customer an ongoing support agreement where you're charging a set fee on a weekly or a monthly basis. So you're going to charge, let's keep this simple, let's say $10,000 a month to deliver a certain number of hours. So every month you will raise a retainer-based invoice for that set fee. Now, if during one of those periods you end up incurring more hours than was allotted for in the retainer, then those additional hours will then be invoiced as an additional invoice on the next billing period for a time and materials. So, for example, let's say in April, we've issued our retainer for $10,000, but by the end of April, we've actually spent $12,000 worth of work. Then when the May retainer invoice is raised, we will also raise a T&M invoice for the $2,000 that were incurred during April as well. So I'm just going to walk through a scenario here. So I set this up. I'll just jump back in there. So I set this up, retainer to T&M. I'm raising retainer-based invoices for $2,000 on a weekly basis. I set this up initially to start on the 19th of April. So if I take a look at my billing, I've got an initial retainer fee for $2,000 invoiced on the 19th. So as you're working through your project, any hours that you log, if there's an amount available within that retainer-based invoice, your expenses and your time logs will be attributed to that existing retainer invoice. Anything that once that retainer is being used, anything else that's incurred during that same period will then be not associated to that invoice and will be flagged ready to be incorporated in the T&M billing process. So I'll just walk you through my time logs. So you'll see here that I logged some time on the 19th. Obviously, that was the first few hours that I had logged, so that automatically gets marked as having been invoiced because it's been attributed to that existing retainer installment. I log another 2 hours on the 22nd. There's still room in that retainer, so that also gets attributed to that. I then logged 3 hours, which is actually these two here. So there wasn't enough room left in that retainer to accommodate all of this. So that's why that's been split. So the 1.66 gets attributed to the existing retainer, and then this got flagged that it would need to be invoiced as part of the ongoing T&M agreement. And then the additional 2 hours were also flagged there as well. So then once it came around to the next week's billing process, these would have been invoiced. So I'm just going to jump back onto the billing tab to show you that on the 26th, the retainer email for the retainer billing event for $2,000 was raised, but we also raised a time and materials invoice to accommodate the additional hours that were used during that week of the 19th. So this works very similar to the deposit to T&M scenario. The main difference being you don't have to manually raise a deposit invoice. The retainer invoices will get created automatically for you in a similar scenario to the existing retainer process. And then the T&M part will be raised if it's needed based on whether you've used used the entire existing retainer. So both time logs and expenses will get attributed to your retainer invoices if there is room. Similar to deposit to T&M, expenses won't get split. They'll either be attributed to the retainer or they'll be marked to be included in time and materials. And the time logs are the record that gets split. So if there is room to attribute all or some of that time log, it will get added to the retainer. Anything that can't be attributed will be split and marked for the next T&M. So this is really going to suit people who have those ongoing support agreements where they'll charge their customer a fixed amount per period, but then if they do incur additional hours, they've got an agreement with their customer where they can actually charge for those additional hours as well. So look forward to hearing how you put this to good use. We've applied a few enhancements to the role allocation functionality. So one of those updates is the ability to now factor in checklist item records when creating role allocations. So previously it would purely be based on the action owner or the contributor records. You now have an additional setting on the control pad within the role allocation automation settings. There's an additional setting here that allows you to set it up to where you can consider checklist item hours and dates. So if you do want to use this, you will need to set that setting to true. The other thing that you will need to do is just configure an additional field on the action object for field history tracking. So I'm just going to jump over to another tab here. So I've gone to the action object into the fields and relationships and clicked on field history. And the field that you need to ensure is set to true is total checklist items. So this field needs to be getting tracked by field history tracking in order to use this feature. So ultimately what this does is allows you to, instead of the role allocations being created for the action owner for the duration of the action or the contributor for their contributor dates, it will now look at the start and end dates and the hours of the individual checklist items. So you can see in this example, we've got this design wireframes action. It's spanning 4 days, and you can see that Colin is responsible for the home page on the 30th with 2 hours, and he's responsible for the content page, which is spanning the 2nd and the 3rd for 2 hours as well. And then Chris is responsible for 8 hours on the contact us page, which is spanning all 4 days. So previously, obviously, as I say, this would have been taken into account. This would have factored in Chris and Colin both working on that action for the duration of the start and end dates of the action. Now, if I just jump over to that action, you can see I'm looking at the role allocations. So Colin has received a 2-hour role allocation on the 30th relating to that first checklist item. He has nothing else until the second and the 3rd, where he's got 1 hour each, which is obviously splitting the 2 hours for that second checklist item that spans the second and the third. And then Chris has got 2 hours each day based on that checklist item. So a few things to note there. Obviously, you need to have the setting set to true, and ultimately, if the checklist item has values in the hours scheduled billable or hours scheduled non-billable fields, and then if the checklist item has start dates and end dates, the role allocations will generate for each working day using even distribution using the checklist item hours and dates. If the checklist item has hours but it doesn't have dates, it will default to the action dates. And then ultimately, if the checklist item doesn't have any values in the hours scheduled billable or hours scheduled non-billable, it will default back to what it was doing previously. So looking at the contributor and the action owner records. The other feature that we've added in is the ability. So customers sometimes have, so they might be using role forecasting and role allocations, which obviously does generate a lot of records. Now they might have some projects, for example, business as usual things that they're just tracking non-billable, like business as usual activities. So they don't need to be tracking and generating role allocation records. So what we've added in is a field on the project where you can choose to opt that project out of generating role allocation and role actuals. So this field will need to be added to your page layout, but ultimately if you set this field to true, then those any actions relating to that project will not have role allocations and role actuals generated for it. So we've added a few minor enhancements to the timesheet just to provide additional functionality based on client feedback. So one of them is on the clone last week's time log. So if I scroll down here and open the clone last week's hours page, so the scenario is that I might actually have been working on the same actions. I might have just done some different activities. So I might have done some different hours or done different tasks. So I want to have a quick way of I want to have access to all of the actions here, but I want to be able to quickly remove the values so I can enter in new values. So what I can do here is just click on the X next to the hours completed, and that will clear out all of the hours, allowing me to go in and put my new hours that reflect what I've done this week. Same as the notes here. I can empty the notes across all fields and then go in and repopulate based on the work that I've done. The only other minor enhancement there is just making, previously you could only see the action. We've just added in the details of the milestone, the project, and the account that the action relates to, so that additional information just helps users see which actions they're working on. The other settings that we've added in are the ability to, so some customers, whilst they want the ability to filter on the project to find the actions, they don't have a need to filter based on the account. So they just want the ability to remove that. So there's a new setting in the timesheet settings. Hide new action account filter. So if I set that field to true and then click on save. So if I scroll down, you'll see that the account lookup has now been removed because I don't need it. The two settings do the same thing. One is for internal users and the other setting is for community users. It just provides you with the ability to actually remove these hyperlinks. So these give you access to jump through to the project, the milestone, or the action. You can actually turn those off now. So as I say, you've got two separate links, one for internal users, one for community. I'm obviously logged in as an internal user, so I'll use this one for now. Click on save. So it still gives me visibility of the records. It's just removed those hyperlinks. So if I don't want my user being able to click away from the timesheet, I can just hide those hyperlinks. So they can be managed. Those settings can be managed by the individual user within their own timesheet settings, or you could control them centrally via the timesheet override settings on the control pad of the mission control console. We've also made a few enhancements to the role utilization report. So the first one is we've added in the ability to toggle the x-axis of the role utilization chart. So you can see at the moment it's displaying hours. Within the settings here, I've got the ability to choose whether I look at hours or percentage. If I just change that over to percentage, my chart will update and show me my percentage figures rather than my hours figures. So you've got that. You've got the ability to manage that on within the settings there. So I'll just change that back to hours. So that's a persistent setting. Obviously, that'll just keep that setting stored for you. The other feature that we've added in is just the ability to have. So previously, it was you were able to control the view based on weekly or monthly figures. You've now got the ability to look at daily or quarterly figures as well. So if you're wanting to get real granular and look at each individual day, you can just look at the daily numbers. Otherwise, you could, if you're wanting to take a more high-level look, you could be looking at on a quarterly basis there. And the final feature was so some customers want their users to be able to come and look at their data on the role utilization, but they don't want them looking at other team members. They purely want to be able to look at their own figures. So we have added a field on the individual role record that says so when this field is true, this restrict role utilization to my role. If that field is set to true, then that user will only actually be able to look at their own data on the role utilization report. So I'll just quickly save that and I'll jump back over here. So previously you could see that I was able to select master team and make adjustments and select various teams. Now, because that setting is true, I'm just going to refresh this page. And you'll see that I no longer have the ability to choose my filter by. I can't set any filter parameters. It's purely my own record that I can look at there. We made a few updates to the hours distributor and the managed forecast components. Fairly minor enhancement in that you can now see the start date and end date of the action owner or the role forecast or the contributor record. So you'll see here that I'm the action owner, and like the start date of the action is the 7th of May and the end date is the 9th. Chris is a contributor and he's currently got a contribution for the 7th and the 8th. So you can see the context of what date range the role allocations are spanning. So that's applicable on both the hours distributor and the managed forecast components. The other enhancement that we've made is there's already a feature within the component that if I extend the hours outside of the action's dates, then the action end date would be increased, or the start date would be changed. That same logic has now been applied for the contributor records as well. So as I just mentioned, Chris has basically currently got a 2-day contribution, so he's working on the 7th and the 8th. If I decide that he can only do 1 hour on the 8th, and I need to move the other hour to the 9th, what that will do is actually increase. That will adjust the end date of his contributor record as well. So if I click on save there, and then just go and check for Chris's contribution. So we'll see that the end date has automatically been adjusted to the 9th to reflect that he's now working on those three business days. So fairly minor, but obviously valuable to customers who do have a need to adjust the contributions there. Okay, that's the end of the demo. So let's take a look at when it's going to be available. So the release schedule, we've changed the release schedule. We used to release this over a 2 week period. We've now adjusted this to be released over a 4 week period. So this just gives customers more time to review the release notes, test it out in sandboxes, and prepare for production. So what that means is on the 3rd of May, it's available for you to manually upgrade via the Salesforce App Exchange. On the 18th of May, we will be automatically upgrading all sandbox orgs. And then on the 1st of June, we will be automatically upgrading all production orgs. So with that said, I'd like to thank you for your time. As always, hope you like the new features that are coming in this release, and we obviously always love to hear feature requests from customers. So please continue to keep that coming, and any questions, please feel free to get in touch. Thank you for your time. Have a great day.